In the winter of 2021, I saw something strange in the sky. It's not the most impressive or mystifying sight, but it was peculiar enough and lasted long enough for me to pull out my phone and take this short video. It looked really high up and was tough to track, and although I only filmed for around 15 seconds, I continued to watch these objects slowly drift across the sky at seemingly the same altitude for a few more minutes before my view was obstructed by a building. I was puzzled for sure, and I wanted to know more. You know, that intense urge to understand and the excitement of the unknown. Maybe it isn't so interesting to some, but I was eager to find out if I had seen something truly unexplained or not. I'm a big skeptic. Earlier in the summer of 2020, I had seen a mind-shattering spectacle one night. Driving on a country road, I looked up and saw a long line of stars shooting across the sky. The view was so breathtaking I nearly crashed my car. I pulled over in a church parking lot and watched for a few seconds as the long line of stars disappeared into nothing before my eyes, right in the middle of the sky. I had no words, and to add on to this, a few seconds later, the ground started rumbling. Two low-flying military helicopters chased behind the stars going the same direction, their lights off, with only moonlight helping me to see them. The sound faded, and I sat in silence for a few seconds before shouting alone in my car. I thought this was my UFO moment. I spent the next 30 minutes of my drive home thinking I had seen something I shouldn't have and that my reality is going to be forever changed. However, that was short-lived because one Google search later, I found my unique UFO sighting to be something well-observed, well-reported, and worst of all, completely definable. I was one of the many people to have seen the newly installed Starlink satellites orbiting the Earth before they were updated to not shine so brightly in the sky. I was a little disappointed by this, but since then, I've sort of always been looking up at the sky, hoping that one day I'd see something that would be actually unexplainable and you couldn't find in just one Google search, or 5, or even 100. Let me say a few words about myself real quick. I said earlier I'm a skeptic. I became a big science nerd when I was 11 or 12, and I still am. For most of my life, I've been very objective when it comes to otherworldly things. I never believed in ghosts, aliens, or any other legends or folklore. I've always been fascinated in these things, but I've never actually been able to believe any of it. My brain loves logic and reasoning, and as much as I wanted to believe all these creepy stories that I'm addicted to that gave me this sense of wonder, I just couldn't let myself for a long time. Recently, though, I wanted to change. I want to let that wonder take the wheel for once. I haven't really seen anything life-changing that has provoked this shift, and no, I also haven't taken any drugs that have opened up my mind. I just think sometimes life's a little cold and empty without that wonder. So nowadays, I leave everything in the realm of possibility. It's more fun that way. So for today, I'll talk about UFOs. Who doesn't love the perfectly creepy and mystifying nature of them? And the fact that there's so much material about them that holds weight in the world of logic and reason as well. And that's a fun balance I always love to see, and makes everything that much creepier when there's a middle ground being struck between the unknown and the objective. So let's see what we can find out today. Let me also preface this video by saying I haven't faked anything in the video I'm showing you. I'm honestly not an amazing editor, and I don't even own After Effects. And when I did try to learn it one time, I gave up after I couldn't even figure out how to press play. I remember I was walking around Nashville when I looked up and saw a very faint collection of objects in the sky. At first, I thought it was just birds, but then I realized they were much too high for that. You can even see some actual birds flying around in the front to get some sense of perspective as to how far up these objects are. It's confusing to look at because it looks like a flock of something. The objects are very random in their placement. It's also strange that the objects are kind of pulsating in and out of visibility. This isn't a result of the camera's quality or settings, as I was witnessing this pulsating with my own eyes too. So, what could this be? Well, after looking back at this video nearly 2 years later, the objects reminded me of a video I had seen of a weather balloon blowing up. The video I saw was from the weather balloon's perspective, but I was quickly able to find a view of what an exploding weather balloon looks like from the ground thanks to Harris County sky. From this video, we see the balloon explode here, and very quickly we could spot an immediate resemblance to my video. the random particles floating everywhere, a similar shape and size, but then there's things that also don't match. For instance, I never saw anything falling to the ground faster, like the box that transmits data, which would have deployed a tiny parachute. The particles from the explosion seem to be falling quickly, although who knows, from their zoomed-in view in this video, it could look like a more noticeable change. There's also no apparent pulsating from anything involved in this video. Maybe that's due to rotation showing a reflective surface on one side and an unreflective surface on the other in my video, or maybe it's just the time of day or some atmospheric condition. Who's to say? It doesn't look like a light of any kind coming from my video, but it's hard to tell for sure. In my video, there's also some irregular movement going on if we're saying it's an exploding weather balloon. For instance, look right here at this particular object. It moves quickly from right to left. Sure, it could be wind, but if it was wind, then that same gust would be moving the whole formation, wouldn't it? Maybe the objects that aren't moving right to left are further in the background, or maybe we're not seeing something so regular. After I put my phone down, I watched the formation move slowly away from me until it disappeared from my view. It didn't look like it was falling, but more like when you see a plane flying straight away from you. They seemed to get smaller and smaller, but by straining my eyes and really focusing, I could still see them for those minutes after recording. With the weather balloons still on the table, as they do look very similar, what else could I roll out? Well, using the video of the balloon I have, there's no sense of how far zoomed in they are, but we could probably assume they're zoomed in quite tight. According to Fox Weather, these balloons rise up to 20 miles in the air before bursting. That's quite a far distance for the naked eye to see. At 20 miles high, the balloon does expand and can grow to be around 30 feet in diameter, which would help visibility-wise, but let's compare looking at a plane with the naked eye, for example. From an average cruising altitude of 6 to 7 miles in the air, a 737 plane, which is 110 feet long, is beginning to look very undefined and almost appears to be a dot. From there, we still have 13 more miles to go and 80 feet to shrink before we're looking at something like a weather balloon, and that's before it bursts. Once the weather balloon explodes, this small object becomes hundreds of even smaller, likely imperceptible pieces of debris. Can we even see a weather balloon at all from this altitude? Well, let's let Fox Weather chime in again with this. Quote, "During certain times of the year, the balloon will reach burst altitude around sunset. When this occurs, the balloon is visible to the naked eye, appearing like a star. But what we see in my video looks like the aftermath of an explosion, if anything. Certainly doesn't look like a star, and it didn't occur at sunset. This video was filmed around 11 to 12 in the middle of the day. I'm not entirely convinced one could see the remnants of an exploded weather balloon with their naked eye, unless they had fallen to a low enough altitude to then become visible. Okay, there seems to be too much uncertainty here. A quick way to find out if this was really a weather balloon or not would be to track down the schedule of when they're sent up and how long the duration of their flight is, right? Well, I thought that'd be really hard to find, but here it is, specific to Nashville as well. They're sent up every day, twice a day, at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m., or 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. during daylight savings. Standard time ended March 14th back in 2021, and this video of mine was taken on March 6th. So that means at 5 a.m. that day, there was a weather balloon sent up in Nashville. However, NWS also mentions that in the wintertime, the balloons can drift very far, sometimes even into Kentucky. The chances may be slim that remnants of a weather balloon would still be floating around Nashville by lunchtime, especially given the time of year and that day being bitterly cold. I remember it well because I was originally sitting outside, and the reason I saw this object in the first place was due to me freezing my ass off and I had to take a walk. Unless these objects are the result of a weather balloon that was sent up somewhere far from Nashville, and given the greater distances that balloons are said to travel in the winter months, it drifted from that location into Nashville, where I then saw it in the air for lunchtime. Who's to say? NWS also says that in special scenarios, like in the case of a hurricane, 6 hourly balloons will be sent up to provide greater accuracy. But the times aren't specified, and the only documented storm I could find for March of 2021 was a cyclone across the world in northeastern Australia. So with all this information, what do you now think of this video of mine? Was it still mystifying? Was it ever mystifying? Do you see it as a weather balloon, aliens, drone swarms, which I looked into, but I don't think so, or something else that I'm not thinking of? I'm all ears, of course, but it'd be cool if you guys are just as puzzled as I am. I've been sitting on this video for a few years now, and I find it interesting how my interest in it dwindles and comes back in little bursts as time goes on. The day I saw this, I remember not even really thinking about it too much for the rest of the day. I mean, is it really all that interesting? Not really, I guess. Compared to the things we see every day on social media, I mean, this doesn't even stand a chance. But when I remember my fascination with the unknown, the supernatural, and anything else otherworldly, I can look at this video and know that even though it could be something normal, I'm still scratching my head at this little formation I saw in the sky. A few minutes in time where I just looked up and watched something I couldn't understand for a little, and it was honestly kind of a nice experience. I'm still looking up at the sky every night and day, hoping to have a similar experience again. I want to extend this to other things eventually. This video isn't the only footage of something strange that I have, but I think I need to do some more investigation before I show it to make sure it is something strange. Until then, I'd love to keep talking about all things unknown throughout history. I mean, who's to say what's real and what isn't? It's an awfully vast and peculiar world out there.